Shana Tova, Gemar Chatima Tova. Can you take a minute and just say that to each other? Take your pick. Shana Tova, Gemar Chatima Tova. That is a beautiful sound to hear in this sanctuary. We gather here tonight for our Kol Nidre service in community to do this work of teshuvah, or return, and tefillah, or prayer, to get our feet moving towards tzedakah, just action. To gather in Hebrew is lehikahel. Our act of gathering creates our identity as a community. A kahal, or a kihila, comes from the same root. Our whole is greater than the sum of our parts. Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik spoke to a Jewish organization in Boston in 1978, saying, "The community is not just an assembly of people who work together for their mutual benefit, but a metaphysical entity, an individuality, I might say, a living whole." We gather together to create that living wholeness in a year that has sorely strained our sense of cohesion. On Kol Nidre, we can do in community what alone we cannot achieve. We speak our prayers and our confessions in the we voice of a group. We're not all the same. Sometimes there's friction or even conflict. Our introduction to the Kol Nidre prayer lays it out. Anu matzirin lehitpalel im ha'avaryanim. We are permitted to pray with people who have crossed important lines. Those people, those transgressors, are all of us. We've all crossed the line this year. We've insulted, we've lied, we've been careless and thoughtless. The lists go on, and we repeat them over and over in the acrostic short confessional Ashamnu and in the longer Al Chet. And yet, we gather. Imperfect, torn, tender, we gather. We gather because unless we gather, we're alone. We don't want to stay alone. Torah teaches us that right off the bat, as the second human is created. Lo tov hayot ha'adam levado, says God. It's not good for a person to be alone. Each one of us has worth and value as an individual. Alone, without outside influences, we make and think according to our own original impulses and reasoning. Each one of us carries and tends the divine spark. Each one of us is unique. But we don't need to stay wrapped up in our singularity, alone and remote from one another, in order to create and to make an important difference. On the contrary, we are asked to come together, to share care and creativity, to bend our strengths to our communal identity and a common task. Rav Soloveitchik again. Each individual has a unique message to contribute, to communicate, a special color to add to the communal spectrum. Hence, when lonely man joins the community, he adds a new dimension to the community awareness. And please read whichever pronouns are helpful for you into Rav Soloveitchik's words. He contributes something which no one else could have contributed. He enriches the community existentially. He is irreplaceable. Yehoshua ben Parachia teaches us in the Mishnah, Aseh lecha rav, make yourself a teacher, uknei lecha chaver, and acquire for yourself a friend, vehevei dan lechol ha'adam lechaf zechut. Judge each person by their good deeds. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Giving the benefit of the doubt is what makes that chaverut, that friendship, that comradeship possible. It's what allows us to not be alone. If we assumed only bad intentions, how could we join together for study or for any other worthwhile project? Imagine I learned that my friend has told something I asked them to keep secret. Might be large, might be small, something that I didn't want other people to know. I can worry over what made my friend feel that my wishes weren't important, or worse, why they wanted to embarrass or hurt me. And that will make me step back from my friend. I might not be as honest or as compassionate with them in the future. I might not call them up next week to build that sukkah together the way we planned. Or I could remember that my friend is human with many responsibilities on their mind, and I can decide that they probably just forgot that I had spoken confidentially. Another example, a colleague uses your idea without giving you credit. Are they jealously trying to undercut you and minimize your work? Or did they maybe just think that they came up with it? Assuming the worst derails relationships and the joint projects that we undertake in those relationships. Assuming best intentions, on the other hand, allows us to stay together and to continue to pursue worthy goals. 10 days ago, on Erev Rosh Hashanah, our Shaliach Tzibor Phil Platkow led us in a rich discussion of what paths might lead to overcoming differences and moving forward together in all of the communities of which we are a part. You folks shared your wisdom generously with one another that night, even as you acknowledged what a difficult problem this is to solve, what a hard question. One person said we need better and more objective facts and information sources and to trust them together. Another person said what we need most is to listen to each other, even when, and I quote, the rocks in your head don't fill the holes in mine. A third said, we need a great community project, something that people get excited to come together and to do. To be in community does not mean to be in homogeneous agreement with every community member. On the contrary, 2 Jews, 18 opinions, no? What building improvements should we take up next? What issues are too political for shul? And what's important to take a public stand on as a Jewish community? How long should Shabbat morning services be? Okay, I have never had someone come up to me and say, Cantor, that service was too short. That's never happened. Inevitably, we encounter ideas and actions that we dislike, but these two are essential parts of the communal endeavor. Rabbi Sarah Mack shared gardening Torah with me during the summer's driest days that reframes, I think, how we can consider disagreement. She said, weeds are native annuals. They're just native annuals. They come back. And even poison ivy feeds the birds. Sometimes, maybe always, it is best to let these native annuals continue to grow in your garden because you never know what they're nourishing. We never know what somebody else's objectionable opinion to us might be nourishing. In our country, we are struggling with this idea of giving others the benefit of the doubt and assuming best intentions. Politics continue to be hugely polarizing, and our personal reserves of tolerance, patience, and trust are badly depleted. We snap at one another, we rush to judgment, and we assume the worst. We've had an extraordinarily difficult 2.5 years. I think that we are just starting to process the trauma of this time. It's marginally safer now to grapple with what we felt during the worst of COVID: loss, anger, betrayal, and profound loneliness. Many high-risk and disabled folk continue indeed to experience that anger and that loneliness as much of the world lurches back towards a new normal. Our temple is committed to continuing to offer hybrid Zoom options for most of our services and programs, and we are also now investigating whether we should offer 1 or 2 all-masked services a month. So please let me or our temple president, Jen Lamprin, know if mask-required services would make a difference for you. Our wells have dipped low, emergency after emergency, forcing us to draw on them, and not enough of the pleasures of life and community refilling them. There's a real temptation to give up on relationships when something happens that upsets us, to say, enough, if this isn't going how I want, I'm done. I don't have the energy or the time, I've done enough. But our relationships and our communities are worth that energy and worth that time. To join in community requires giving up something, the ability to have it all our own way and some precious alone time. But without joining together in community, we isolate ourselves from opportunities to recognize each other's worth and to build something, to build holiness together. The Chatam Sofer commented that the Torah seeks not the holiness of solitary worship or Nazarite self-denial, rather the opposite. Be holy in community. Be holy when you are part of a congregation and a community and involved with God's creations. to dig our hands into the difficult work of care for other living beings as a group effort, that is our purpose. Not to agree about everything, not to be angels, nor to be comrades with angels, to be Haverim, partners with one another, human together, making mistakes, but also making something worthwhile. This year, our community has 3 big series of conversations already planned. I'm sure more to come, but to these 3, I want to mention and invite you particularly tonight. We need you and we want you and all of your opinions in these conversations, especially when there is disagreement. Our Spirited Aging Together group, sponsored by the Chesed Committee, is going to talk about what it's like to get older, to communicate important things with our family, and personal stories and values that we want to share. Our Dayenu Circle, starting Thursday night, is going to help us be hopefully and actively involved in building our world's resilience to climate change. In Israel Chavurah, which was established many years ago by a Rabbi Emeritus Eric Corino, we'll share our own connections to and feelings about the Holy Land and respond together to what happens in it. Our opinions will differ. I'm not going to say may differ. They will differ on aging, on climate action, and on Israel and Palestine. Inevitably, we're going to disagree. But each original thought shared will build our community's awareness. Each of your acts of participation, your unique and irreplaceable sparks, will open up conversations and actions that could never be possible without you. There is a beautiful story in Masechet Ta'anit of the Talmud. The Jewish community is in the middle of a prolonged drought. Food stores are low, desperation is high. After the first rain, the prophet among them tells the Jews, "Sa'u v'zir'u," go out and sow your crops. The people, understandably, are concerned that in a drought, those seeds won't grow. They ask the prophet, somebody who has just a little wheat or barley left, should that person eat them and live, or sow them and die? Can you imagine that choice? Can you imagine that town meeting? People deciding whether to fill their starving bellies now, but give up on the potential for a future harvest, or to throw the dice for communal survival that will fail if the rains don't show. What would you do? The prophet said to them, Af al pi chen, which means even though there is no rain and we don't know when it will come, even though you have barely anything to eat, even though our world is precarious and resources are unequally held, T'u v'zir'u, go out and sow. And they did. The prophet's grammar in this story, I think, is significant. The community had asked him, what should one especially needy individual do? Should that person opt out of the group effort and make a lonely bid for survival? No. The prophet's words don't change in his response. He continues to address the entire community in the plural, including the needy individual as a part of it. T'u v'zir'u. Stay together and sow your crops together, he commands. Nobody should starve or feast alone. What's the end of this story? Na'asa lahem nes. A miracle was made for this community. After they sowed their last seeds, more caches of seeds were revealed to them in the walls of their buildings, hidden in ant holes. When a community sows seeds together with hope, life is called out of the very walls. That's what we're asked to do this Yom Kippur and every day of the year. Af al pi chen, even though it may feel risky, let us sow seeds together, work together, harvest together, affirm together, hope together, and build together as individuals who step forward out of loneliness to become part of a living whole. As a community, we can create miracles. Gemar Chatzima Tova.